Alrighty. Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our last workshop of this whole entire hackathon. My name is Gary Tu, the co-founder and co-director of Synhacks and Hack the World, and we're very excited for you guys to be joining us today. If you're on YouTube Live, make sure to use that chat feature to connect with us and ask us any questions that you have. And today, Girl Genius Magazine will be presenting a workshop about how to get internships in high school. And before then, I'd like to pass it off to Emma, our communications director, to tell us a little bit more.
Okay, so this workshop will be led by the founder and executive director, Shivali Gulati, who has gotten internships at Verizon, University of Arizona, SRI, and Safe Squad. Shivali is a high school senior from the Bay Area who is passionate about equitable computer science education and bridging the gender gap in STEM. By founding Girl Genius Mag, her team has reached 460,000 plus girls worldwide through their magazine issues, virtual events, and social media campaigns. Shivali's dedication to promoting inclusivity in STEM is shown through her 2 times Code with Classy Scholarships, San Francisco NCWIT Awards, placement in international business competitions, as well as her efforts working with companies like GitHub, HyperX, Vercel, Ubisoft, and PopSockets to bring educational opportunities to girls in STEM worldwide. When Shivali is not working on Girl Genius, she can be found interning at companies like Verizon, 3D printing keychains for local organizations, or organizing hackathons throughout the Bay Area. Okay, Shivali, you can get started.
Cool. Can everyone hear me? Just like drop a yes in the YouTube chat. Okay, cool. All right. So welcome to the workshop. Thank you guys so much for, attending this hackathon and coming to this event. So before we get officially started, I just wanted to reintroduce myself. My name is Shivali, and I'm a rising high school senior from the Bay Area. I'm interested in product management and marketing. Like Emma said, I do run a nonprofit called Code Genius, where we do a lot of virtual events. We've amassed over 4,000 attendees in the past 2 months with our virtual events, and they're open to everyone. So if you want to learn about things like getting internships in college, writing good college essays, blockchain, coding, all those stuff, you can follow us on Instagram to be notified whenever we have those really cool events. We also are wrapping up our College Week series, where we've had over 10 takeovers with 10 women in STEAM who are pursuing STEM majors in college and going to schools like Harvard, Penn, Columbia, you name it. And it's a really, really insightful experience. And so I'd appreciate it if you guys could support us there. But yeah, what makes me qualified to even give this workshop? So we can talk about my previous internship experience. So during my first internship I got was when I was a sophomore in high school, and I was a web development and outreach intern at Safe Squad, which is a really small limited liability corporation based in New York. And the way that I found out about Safe Squad and I got this internship was through cold emailing. And so I found out about Safe Squad by honestly watching an Instagram takeover and learning about the founder's story and how, a problem that she faced, she used tech for social good in order to solve it. And that really resonated with me. And so I sent her an email and I was like, hey, my name is Shivali. I really like your company. This is a skill set I can provide. And she was like, yeah, I'd love to have you be an intern. And so I've been interning there for the past 2 years. And what I've been primarily doing was that I first started off with redesigning their web page using coding languages like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, and incorporating a lot of WordPress plugins as well. And then I slowly expanded my role, noticing that Safe Squad didn't have a lot of social media presence, by coordinating Instagram takeovers. And since then, we've gotten Safe Squad introduced to over 52,000 unique Instagram users. I currently still am an intern at Safe Squad. I would say in comparison to my other internships, this is something that doesn't require a lot of time on my end because it's really like a 1 to 2 hour commitment per month. But that is not the case for my other internships. The second internship I got was that I was a research intern at the University of Arizona this past May, like around AP testing season. And I had this internship for 3 weeks. And the way that I got this internship was honestly by leveraging my network. So I'll be talking a little bit more about this in my third internship experience that got postponed. But basically what happened was that my original internship I was supposed to do this summer got postponed. And so I quickly acted And, on the Girl Genius Instagram, we actually featured a woman who actually did like research at Google, at Carnegie Mellon, and she did a lot of research in high school too. And so I reached out to her, because my internship got postponed. And I was like, hey, do you know about any internships that are open, especially in research? Because I could not find any. And she was like, yeah, there's this ASU one open. And so she sent me the link the day before it was due. And I filled out the application really quickly. And I ended up getting this opportunity. And so for 3 weeks, I worked with a company called Redox Engine that basically works with a lot of healthcare facilities. That is their main partner, and like that allows their business to function. And so obviously COVID-19 impacted their audience a lot. And so what I and another undergraduate student did was we conducted a lot of research on how COVID-19 was impacting the buying behavior of their key audience, and how the verticals that Redux should focus on, the technologies they should invest in, and basically like strategizing what are the next things the company should focus on because of coronavirus. And originally this internship was only supposed to be 2 weeks, but because the CEO liked working with us so much, he allowed us to extend it for 3 weeks. And by the way, these 2 internships were not paid. The third internship that I had secured was that I was supposed to be a machine learning research intern at SRI, which is a lab in Palo Alto, for 4 weeks this summer, part-time, so like 4 hours a day. And this internship got postponed because of COVID. They basically had to stop their data collection, and there was no way for me to like tackle on the same research project that I had been assigned to remotely. And so I'm going to be interning here next summer as a full-time intern, so from 9 to 5. And the way that I got this internship was by cold emailing, doing the typical thing that a lot of people do whenever they want a research internship, making a master list of professors and labs that you're interested in and shooting a shot and sending those quick emails. I'll be talking about cold emailing and like the specific template that got me this internship, as well as my Safe Squad internship a little bit later. So stay tuned for that. But what I was supposed to do at SRI was work on analyzing like the effect of people being introduced to like CS concepts earlier versus later. And I was going to get paid for this internship as well. The current internship I'm doing is that I'm a summer intern at Verizon this summer. I have just finished up my 3rd week. I have 2 more weeks left to go until my internship ends. And this is a paid internship. The reason why I got this internship was what I would like to call like a personal connection, in that at my high school and a lot of high schools like throughout the United States, some high schools have a program called the NAV Academy. So NAV is kind of like a national organization that instills students for like college readiness through these 3-year academy programs. So academies can focus on things like engineering, business, and hospitality. So I've been a part of the Engineering Academy for 3 years, where we work with 3D printers. And part of getting NAV certification is completing an internship through NAV. And so NAV basically chose 20 students out of 3,000 students in my high school to continue on with an internship at Verizon this summer. And so that's how I got this opportunity. And what I've been doing really is working with a lot of industry professionals at Verizon on building nonprofit and business proposals to help Verizon see how their existing technologies like 5G, edge computing, machine learning can help build a more sustainable community overall. And what I'm primarily working on is kind of like developing the marketing aspect of this, as well as the app frames for our idea. So why should you even intern? Well, this is a really important question to ask. And the first and foremost thing is that you should not intern for college apps. As a rising high school senior, I understand that this time is extremely confusing and that a lot of people, including myself, sometimes feel the need to do more. And that, that can be translated into getting an internship. But honestly, internships are very, very time consuming. I have been dedicating the past 3 weeks of my life towards waking up at 9 a.m. and being on a Zoom call until 3 p.m., like 4 p.m. actually, every single day. That is a huge chunk of time that I could be spending on other things too. So please do not intern for the sake of college apps, because they are very time consuming, and also because internships are learning experiences. You are working with a real life company, whether they're small or whether they're big. what you're doing for them ultimately has some sort of impact. And so it's important to recognize that you're doing this for the genuine reasons, because when you're doing something for like a genuine reason, you're more inclined to give it your all and actually make use of the experiences that they're providing. So why did I want to intern? Well, like all of you at this hackathon, I actually organize and attend a lot of hackathons in the Bay Area. And I really loved attending these hackathons, not for like the sake of the competition or winning, but because I really loved like meeting people across the Bay and working on, like building an MVP over the course of like 12 hours. It was so fun, just like bouncing off ideas with people, and like making wireframes and IDEs and quickly making a last minute pitch video. That was super fun for me. And I really wanted, as much as I loved building those MVPs, what's the difference between a hackathon and like another internship is that generally for internships, you're building upon an existing product. And so I really wanted to apply my technical skills to like real life projects. So like this can be exhibited by my time at Safe Squad. I did not recode their entire website. What I did was I added upon like the existing website and redesigned certain aspects of it to make it even better. I also really wanted to explore the intersection of tech and business, because living in the Bay Area, there are so many STEM opportunities, but beyond things like FBLA and DECA, there's really not a lot of things when it comes down to business. And in particular for things like marketing, design, those opportunities are really, really rare. And if they're available, they're generally really, really expensive. And so I really wanted to have a real life experience where I could, help an organization with their social media platform, or, see what it means to like make a really good app and understanding my consumer, but also translating that, into code. And so I really wanted to like explore these fields. And I think that, when you're coming up with your ways of why you want to intern, you want to realize that like a lot of the subjects that you're passionate about are so complex, and they're not really dense. And so what that means is that like, tech is not just coding, like business is not just like pitching or finance. There's so many aspects of it. And I talk about this at the very end, but like all of these fields are evolving every day, and they're becoming even more and more complex. That shouldn't serve to scare you. It should really just serve as like a new idea of like you being able to go into so many different directions. So if you're going to take away anything from my entire internship workshop, it's that you do not have to pay $6,000 to get an internship. The amount of people I know who do this is way too many. I know a lot of people who will drop like $6K to do research at Yale. And, like, yes, that's a great opportunity. I will say that, both of my research opportunities, I got through like zero personal connections. Like one of them was through DMs and asking if there was an opportunity that anybody knew was available. And then my other one was through cold emailing without knowing these people at all. And I was going to get paid for my internship this summer to do research. And so I really do not believe that you have to spend money to get an internship, whether it's research or whether it's a coding internship or anything else. And the reason why I honestly don't recommend paying for it is because the way that I think about it is that in the long scheme of things, when you go to college, your parents cannot pay $6,000 for you to get an internship at Stanford. Like it's just not, that's not the way the world works. What you should be using this time for is to learning how to pitch yourself, to learn how to, answer what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, because those questions continue on in your interviews as the years go on by. And by preparing yourself, by learning how to cold email now, by learning how to network now, by building your skill set, whether that means, being able to make even a calculator in Python, you're building up, your skill set towards being a really successful intern or person in the career that you want to go into. And I don't think that translates necessarily to like spending money, because I don't think that if something is more expensive, it's always better. And honestly, I will say this, I have always learned more in the internships that I haven't been paid for. So spending money on like doing research isn't always the best thing to do. And I honestly think that everyone can get an opportunity for no cost. So how do you even get an internship? Well, step one is to figure out your why. I told you guys my why, but these are the two questions that I think you should, create a Google Doc and answer these. The first off is, why do you want to intern? The reason why you have to answer this question is it's because it's going to help you narrow down the companies and the types of jobs that you want to, contribute to an organization. So like for me, I was really interested in like outreach and web development. So like, looking for internships, opportunities, or like cold emailing and presenting myself and being like, hey, I'm interested in like UI UX or social media or designing web pages. That allowed me to shortlist and like find startups in my area that best reflected the kind of skills that I wanted to learn. And so don't limit yourself to the skills that you already know when you're making this doc. For example, like when I cold emailed for like my machine learning internship, I didn't even know how to make a neural network. Okay, like I barely knew any machine learning, and I still probably don't know a lot. And that's okay because internships are learning opportunities. They just want to see that you have a foundation and like other coding languages. It doesn't always have to be the one that you're applying for, although that does help. Um, and see your willingness to learn and pick up things quickly, because that's the way that it is really on the real job. And so make a list of things and skills you want to learn, because this really influences, your resume, which I'll be talking about next. Resumes. I'm sure everyone has heard this, but on average, resumes are declined within 7 seconds of reading it. Now, I don't think this is the case for high school internships, but in the real world, this is a very common thing. And making sure that your resume is readable and that it actually showcases your skills is crucial. And this is the perfect time to practice it, And so here are my 2 initial tips before I break down my resume and how I write my descriptions. The first tip I have when it comes to resumes and just, putting your experiences is getting on LinkedIn. So if you don't know what LinkedIn is, it's kind of like an online platform where a lot of industry professionals and undergraduate students like post a lot of content. And it's kind of like an online resume thing. Like you can go on someone's LinkedIn and be like, oh yeah, they went to XYZ school, or like they're an intern at Google. And so it's a really easy place for like you to network and meet other people. And I really think it's an undervalued source as a high school student, because a lot of high school students are actually on LinkedIn, and I've actually been reached out by a lot of students. And something that I did, prior to like, applying to college this year, was that I spent all of my junior year like reaching out to undergraduate students and asking them how their experience was doing an XYZ major at a school I was interested in. So that's another way that you can use it, even for not other internships. But yeah, the reason why I recommend getting on LinkedIn is just because it's so approachable in comparison to like actually creating your resume on first value. So like if you use LinkedIn, you basically have your own profile, which is your profile, aka kind of like your resume, but like a lot more in depth, I would say. And so it's really easy to add your experiences on there. Like I always make sure my LinkedIn is updated. But another reason why I recommend using LinkedIn is because that's how I actually made my resume. So there's this amazing Chrome extension called sieve.io. It's completely free. And what this does is it takes all of the information that's on your LinkedIn and it turns it into a resume within 2 minutes. The next slide, my resume was made completely with that. And it was so convenient, so fast. And as someone who like, it's a lot easier for me to update my LinkedIn because, I can just view on it on my phone and just edit it and be like, oh yeah, like let me just update this job experience really quickly. And so, when submitting a resume, it's always so easy for me to like extract all the information because Sieve does all the hard work for you in terms of design and format. If you don't want to go down that route, you can also use Canva. Considering the fact that all of you at a hackathon, you probably have GitHub accounts. So I highly recommend signing up for the GitHub Student Developer Pack because you can get Canva Pro for free for a year. And honestly, it is life-changing if you're interested in anything design related. And they also have really good resume templates. And without fail, the old Google Doc route always does well. I know a lot of Google Step interns actually use Google Docs exclusively for their resumes. And so like, it really depends on like what you are really comfortable with. And I recommend trying out different things. Like Canva was not something I really loved, even though like I'm an avid Canva user. Like I really loved using Sieve a lot more. But I think that it really depends on your preference. So this is my resume. And again, made this using the Sieve.io Chrome extension. So let's break this down. I think that every resume should always start off with the basics. So your name, the email you check the most, without a doubt. The amount of times that I've applied to something on Check or Indeed and it went to my spam because I didn't check it, it was pretty high in the beginning. So make sure that it's an email that you consistently check and you clean out. Put a website if you have one. If you are applying as a CS or design, related job or internship, or even you're cold emailing, have your GitHub or Dribble account or like your personal portfolio. In my SRI interview, they literally pulled up my GitHub and started asking me questions about my projects, which is something I was not expecting. It's also a really easy way for you to convey like the skill set you have, and for them to get like a thorough understanding of your actual like coding abilities. Like I can say I know HTML, but I'm not the master of HTML, and that's pretty much conveyed my GitHub. Like, oh, Shivali's proficient at HTML. She's built like a few websites with it. And it just allows them to see what you're doing. Then in the upper right-hand corner, I have my education. So obviously, like put your school, the years, like those are really typical things. And then coursework. I know that all of you are probably taking a lot of, courses in high school, whether it's APs or honors or CC classes, but do not put any coursework that has nothing to do with the types of jobs you are applying to. So for example, if you're applying as a CS major, the person who you're trying to get an internship at is not going to care if you took AP World History. Like they're just not going to care about it. So like make sure, your resume only has so much space. Really use it wisely. So for me, I have like all of my CS classes here. And then I just have like some miscellaneous activities. Then, which is going to be the heart of your resume, which is your experiences. Now, if I have any tip, it's going to be to show your impact. So I'm a high school debater. I did debate for like 3.5 years. I did varsity PF, if any of you are curious. And although I wasn't really great at it, something that my partner and I loved to do was that basically at the start of every debate round, each team presents their case. And then there's a thing called crossfire. And at the end of every case, it's like, oh, if all dogs are amazing, then the world will save 10,000 people. Like, let's just say that's the argument. What my partner and I love to do is we love to call out people so hard if they didn't tell me how many people would be impacted by their argument. And what we would do in our speeches is we would tell the judges that, and we'd be like, let's assume their impact is 1. And that's the way you want to go about this. So for example, like let's say I write something like started a coding club to teach girls how to code. It's like, great. I'm going to assume there's 1 girl in the club because you did not paint the picture for me. And you're just like, Shivali, there's more than 1 girl in the club, right? Turning that into something like started Milpitas's first coding club with 30 plus girls and 4 officers, that provides the person who's evaluating your resume with so much more context, and it paints the picture for them. Like I said earlier, these resumes are rejected within 7 seconds. You want to paint the picture. You don't want to give them time to interpret because most of the time they're not going to even attempt to do that. So numbers are a very easy way to convey your tangible impact. I think a lot of people are like, oh, but what if I only increased app downloads by 1%? That still matters, And so I think that really utilizing numbers is really, really crucial. But also your experience should talk about, like this should also include like action verbs. Like for me, I did researched, identified, determined, presented, established, redesigned, published. Like these are all very strong action verbs. And every single line should basically convey a new action you're doing. And so for experiences, this is generally like your extracurricular activities you've done in high school. So for me, I like to put my internship experience at the top. Obviously, Verizon isn't on there yet because I'm not done. And then I put my other experiences. I think that for resumes, this is not like the Common App. It's not like you should feel obligated to fill up all 10 slots. This is about quality over quantity. I've definitely done more extracurricular activities than this. However, these are the ones that I made the most impact with and that really showcase my skill set as someone who's interested in both tech and outreach. Then there's the awards and skills section. I honestly really need to add a skills section to my resume. That's something that I really want to improve. And so for skills, that's really about the hard skills. Do not write that you don't have a skills section and put leadership. That is something that should be conveyed by your descriptions, or like communication. Like again, should be conveyed by your description. Putting hard skills like softwares you use, like Adobe Photoshop, coding languages like C++, softwares like AutoCAD. Those are the types of things that allow them to see like what things you're comfortable using. For awards, I feel like this is sometimes necessary and it's sometimes not. I think it really depends on the type of program that you're applying to. But I just recommend ordering them in like the order of prestige, and you can also lump them together. So resume descriptions. So these are actually like things I have on my LinkedIn. These are not like all on my resume. This is the only one that like is on my resume because it's short and sweet. But let's talk about it. Every single line of your resume or the job experience should reveal a new skill. So the way that I like to write these is doing a thing called impact calculus. And it's what you did and what the impact of that was. That's the way that you should be writing your description. So for example, I think that this is a pretty good example of it. So I said organize virtual conferences and workshops. That's what I did. With 3,600 attendees, that's the impact. But not only were there a lot of people, they were from a lot of places. But not only that, an additional impact of beyond, making these STEM resources accessible to so many people was that 98% of attendees left more interested in STEM. And so that really, really shows how effective the virtual conferences and workshops I planned were on my intended audience. I think that also this does it really well too. So I said coded and designed Superposition IV's website using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and Bootstrap, which receives 3.5K views monthly, enabling 600 plus signups. Now, obviously, I haven't been able to make as much impact because it was just really coding a website, but I still included the numbers. So writing things like it's viewed by 3,500 people every month. That shows that it's something that is important and that, my work is projected to a lot of people. But also the fact that, the website was a main source of like the amount of people who did sign up. And so I really did include that number too. I also strongly recommend do not use phrases like dramatically, thousands, and extreme, because these are again super, super vague. At the end of the day, your resume should paint the picture, be straightforward as possible, when it comes down to your descriptions. Because by using phrases like dramatically, it's like, let's say something like increased app downloads dramatically. What does that mean? Does that mean dramatically means different for everyone? For me, it could be 1. For someone next to me, it could be 5,000. For someone, it could be 10,000. So you really have to paint the picture when it comes down to these things. Step 3 is organizing. Now that you have your resume, now that you've figured out your why and you've shortlisted what you want to do, it's time to actually make stuff happen. And so I strongly recommend using this app called Microsoft OneNote. It is life-changing. I'm using it for my college apps right now, and it's amazing. But I also used it for internships. And I made a sample spreadsheet for you guys on what you should include when you're organizing and starting to draft these emails and these applications. So in terms of wanting to start these things, a lot of high school internship programs start opening up in November and December. Well, actually, they start opening up January, February. Spending the end of first semester to find these opportunities and keeping it on a spreadsheet will help you out. But for cold emails, you can do these kind of throughout the year. And so let's break this down. So the first thing you have is the name of the company, the position. So be detailed when it comes to, this. I think that the 2 most important things here, the 3 most important things are the skills needed, company's research / professor notes, and why do you want this? So for skills needed, you really want to go ham on this. You want to see how you can show that you are a good applicant and an ideal applicant. So writing down the software and coding languages you need to know. Just writing about those things and seeing, like if you're applying somewhere, conveying this in your application essays or adjusting your resume descriptions to highlight your web development work more. That's why you want to do this. This is very, very crucial as well. I'm a firm believer that if you don't get to know the company or organization or lab you want to research or professor you want to research with, why should they get to know you? This is why in my cold emailing template, we have an entire paragraph dedicated towards like talking about the professor's work and like how that related to you and your interests. And because it shows them that, hey, I read your like 100-page paper, let's talk, right? It shows your dedication and also allows you to come up with ideas on how you want to improve an organization. And then why do you want this? Again, I think the why do you want this is basically a section where you can put out your ideas. So like, for example, like when I first started, I noticed that, the founder was not doing a lot of takeovers at SafeSquad. And I was like, oh, like we should, make sure this happens. And like showcasing the impact more on the website is something that I'm actually working on right now. And I think that this is a really, really key point that if you're applying for any like program, make sure to look at like their mission statement and see how you can embody that and showcase that in your application. That's what I did for ASU. And so like that really worked out for me because I basically, ASU's research mission statement is about like innovation for social good. And so I tied that into a lot of the essays I had to write. Finding internships. This is hard. I will say that. Shameless plug, but you can totally sign up for the Girl Genius mailing list. We put around at least 2 high school internship opportunities, and we don't spam. We only send 1 email every like 7 to 10 days. You can also, if you're a girl interested in tech, I highly recommend joining the Built by Girls Wave program. They pair you up with a industry professional working in the tech or business industry. And a lot of my friends have gotten internships through their advisor because they've referred them directly. But even if you can't get a referral necessary, your mentor can like look over your resume and like actually help you, with your elevator pitch, branding yourself and things like that, and getting a more personalized, set of hands towards helping you. LinkedIn. This is something that I like to call LinkedIn stalking. So something that I used to do, like when I was during my like freshman year, was that I used to go and find high school students on LinkedIn, and I used to see what extracurricular activities they did, what summer programs that they did, where did they intern. And I think that with coronavirus happening right now, this is a really good time to take advantage of this strategy. And it's because, before there were the geographical limitations, like, oh, this person doesn't accept. I can't like ever intern. But now with everything being remote, you can definitely shoot an email to, let's say someone interned at like a small company in New York. And you're like, oh, I like this company. It's so interesting. Just shoot them an email. You totally have a higher chance right now because of everything that's remote. Another reason why you should do this is because I remember I was looking over someone's LinkedIn profile and they did a UC Berkeley program held by the Society of Women Engineers Club. And I found out about that program through them. And for 10 weeks during my second semester of junior year, I went to UC Berkeley. And for 3 hours every Saturday, I was taught about different engineering programs for $0. So that allowed me to find a very accessible and like a really insightful program that was not only affordable, but also like something that fit my interests. So that is also a really great way to find out about summer programs and extracurricular activities you can get involved in. I think when in doubt, if you're really struggling, Chegg and Indeed are a pretty good place to start. I haven't found a lot of people who've been successful from them, but if you're really, really struggling, you can definitely like send your resume a lot there. Simba.io is actually like an internship matchmaking service, so it's completely free. They do make you take like a coding test. So if you're someone who's not very confident in your coding skills, I wouldn't recommend it. But I've heard a lot of people who've like worked at like GoFundMe through this matchmaking process in high school. Another underrated source is going on something called roundpeer.com. A lot of small businesses will actually like post, or like podcasts will post if they need interns. So that's also a really great place to find out not only about virtual extracurricular opportunities, but internships as well. So the infamous cold email template. I think cold emailing is really hard, but it's definitely something that with practice, you can get better over time. When I first emailed people, like during my sophomore year, my emails were probably like this long. And so you definitely want to make sure that your emails are not extremely long. You don't want to send them an essay because these people barely have time, but also like make sure that you are conveying everything you want to explain about yourself in a short and concise and straightforward way. So let's break this template down. I highly recommend taking a picture of this for your reference. It'll probably be up on the YouTube channel as well. But for the basics, introduce yourself, and out of the gate, what are you interested in? What do you want to do at the company? Again, that comes down to your spreadsheet. You can literally extract that information from there. But that's the first paragraph. It's pretty general. The second paragraph, in my opinion, is the most important because this is the why. Why do you want to intern there? This is you answering that question. This is you conveying what do you want to do here. If you are asking for a research internship, you have to reference a specific paper in this section. You have to talk about the paper. What did you understand? What did you like about the paper? Why do you think, based off of this paper, working with this professor would be a good idea? Like, these are all questions you have to answer in this area. Then I think your third paragraph should be a very brief summary on what makes you qualified. This should be like a peak because you're going to attach your resume, so you don't want to give it all away. I think that here it's most important to attach like your hard skills. So like for me, when I was applying this machine learning intern, I would put like the coding languages I knew how to use and the libraries for machine learning I had used before. I wouldn't recommend like mentioning like other things unless it's very applicable to the research internship you do. And then you're just going to be doing off with like a closing statement, asking if you can do an internship, and just attach your resume. I highly recommend scheduling these for Mondays at 8 a.m. Those generally just get the best responses. But yeah, this is the template that I used. So let's talk about some COVID-19 internship tips that I have for all of you. Research is just not going to be a possibility, but in particular, like CS or science research is going to be extremely hard to come by, especially now that summer is ending. I know some people who have done science remote internships over the summer through like things like SSI, but a lot of people have told me that they really haven't learned as much virtually just because it's very different, especially if you're going into something like science or like, you know, you're actually doing all the lab stuff. You have to be there in person to like actually learn for it. And so it's okay. I know that research is super interesting. I loved it, but there will always be next summer, and whenever coronavirus ends, you know, we can get back to it. Because research is an impossibility, what you should do is you should email startups in your area. I think that, you know, especially if you live in California like I do, with COVID literally continuing and seeming like it's not going to stop, you know, in a lot of places as well, I think that a lot of people are still feeling a lot of financial distress. This means that everybody's going to want free help all the time. And if you literally email a company and you're like, hey, I could build your website for free, or I could work on this project for free, they're more inclined to take you on. Just because, you know, it's a lot easier to take on someone and not have to pay them during this time. But I think that a really important note is that rejection is 100% normal. I sent 100 research emails and I got 1 yes. My friend sent 300 research emails. She got 3 yeses to do research at Harvard, MIT, and U Chicago. It worked out for her, but she's had to send out so many emails and she got rejected a lot. And so know that there is light at the end of the tunnel and that it does take time. Again, when you're writing these emails for the first time, like you are learning how to present yourself and market yourself. And it's not as easy as it seems, you know, because you don't want to seem like too arrogant and like you're a know-it-all, like a CS god, but you also don't want to like mine your skills. And so finding that balance is something that you learn by writing and practicing to write these emails, especially if you're applying for research. Like those papers are so dense and they're not easy to understand. Those first two emails would be tough, but like it gets better. And I think that especially with COVID happening, like don't worry about like how this will affect you in terms of college. I don't think you have to get an internship to go into a very good school. I think internship experience is great, but like don't beat yourself about it if like, you know, you lost your internship because of COVID and now you don't have one. Like, you know, it's okay. It's not to the end of the world, honestly. So if you have an internship, here are a few of my tips. So the first tip I have is to ask questions and bring ideas to the table. I think that, you know, I'm doing a, I did 2 remote internships this past few months. And I think that for me, it was really important to learn how to over communicate, you know, because it's not like you're going to see these people every day, like, you know, just sitting next to them. It's a lot harder to communicate something through Zoom. And I think that a lot of people face more technical difficulties as well, like when you're presenting something, or like your Wi-Fi goes out, or like, you know, you cut off at one time. And so it's really, really important when you're speaking to your supervisor to like convey this information and also ask questions more than needed. Because, you know, like the amount of times I've even been on a Zoom call where like no one has questions and I'm like, how does no one have questions? And then I'm less inclined to ask a question is really high, but you have to get over that and realize that like, look, if you have a question, someone else in the room really does too. Ask extensions if you need it. Like seriously, I think a lot of people are scared that like, oh my God, my supervisor will not be happy. Like the way that I like to ask for extensions is that first of all, I like to show the supervisor what I've already done. And then I'd be like, hey, this is what I was able to accomplish in this period of time. Can I have an extension so I can accomplish more and fulfill the task to the best of my ability? That makes them more inclined to give you an extension because they've seen that you've already put in some work. It's a lot better than being like, oh, I didn't do any of the work, can I have an extension? Right? So definitely let them know. Like for example, for my ASU internship, I had to miss like 2 meetings because I had AP testing. And so I just let my supervisor know. I was like, hey, I have my AB test. Is it possible to, you know, reschedule a meeting? And he was like glad to like reschedule. He's like, yeah, for sure. We can like push it back an hour. I'm like, thank you so much. So people are really understanding. I think especially with like COVID happening and like all of us still adapting to like the things that are happening around us. So it's really not a sign of weakness, recognizing that you need more time. Ask how you can improve and get to know people. I think coffee chats are so underrated. I've had over 50 coffee chats during COVID and I've gotten to know so many people and learned about different jobs. So, you know, if you can't get on a call, emailing your professor asking, you know, about how you can improve, what you've been doing well. These are all really, really important things to convey because it's not like you can have lunch with your professor, right? So like get to know them, make sure that you are really making it a point that you care about this internship and that you really want to grow with this experience and you are taking advantage of everything you can, especially during this time. And lastly, you should build your skill set always. If you don't get an internship this summer and you know school is starting, like I'd starting in August, you should always build your skill set. Because especially if you're going to something like tech changes every 5 years. You know, remember with like AI was just like a really like it wasn't even it was like barely something that we've heard a lot in the news, and now AI and machine learning are literally everywhere and they're only expanding. And so like you have to kind of go in with that perspective that especially if you're going to go into something like engineering that is always evolving, that you have to evolve too. And that sounds intimidating, but like literally learning things like, you know, something I've been doing in quarantine is like practicing some UI UX skills. So like these are some frames that I made. And although they're not the most amazing frames I've ever seen in my entire life, they're definitely a drastic improvement from where I started. And so, you know, definitely using this time by competing at hackathons like these and forcing yourself to build an MVP and ideate and understand your market audience and create a product that actually benefits someone, that is you building your skill set. And that's really, really great. And that can ultimately serve as a source of you getting these internships, because you can't get internships without skills. Like, you can like sometimes get them without a little experiences, but like definitely showing, some side projects you've worked on always helps. So what are my main takeaways? Number one is to believe in yourself and know what you're capable of. I know that going on things like LinkedIn and like living in the Bay Area, it's so easy to feel imposter syndrome. Like I feel imposter syndrome all the time. You see people who like intern at Stanford and MIT, and I'm like, oh my God, y'all are too cool for me. Understanding that everybody goes at their own pace and that certain opportunities are sometimes only available to certain people, that is also something to take into consideration. And that, like just because you didn't get an internship now doesn't mean like it's the end for you. Like when my SRY internship got postponed, I was so sad. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do this summer? And then I got an internship at Verizon and I got an internship at ASU. And honestly, it's been pretty great. And like, it makes up for the fact that like that internship got postponed, and recognizing that like it does come with time. My second takeaway is to personalize your applications and emails to the companies and job roles, even your resume. So if you're you can reorder like resume experiences to like basically like if you're applying for a business role, maybe highlighting your involvement like FBA and DECA over your other experiences will probably help more. Quantify your impact on resumes. Again, you have to paint the picture, be the Bob Ross of your resumes. You got to paint the picture for them to accurately understand who you are very, very quickly. Be straightforward with those numbers. Email startups for better luck. Do not email people like Google, Verizon, and all those things, because you're going to be competing with college students and they are actually getting like left off and like rescinded, and like they actually like have degrees in whatever they're interested in, and so like I would recommend it. But emailing startups in your area is a really, really good idea, or just like some cool companies you find on Instagram. That always works out too. And again, putting time and effort into this job. I know that sounds so obvious, but like if you have an opportunity this summer, I think that having one of these things is even more, valuable now than ever, especially because of how it's affected everyone. And so definitely show that you are there to learn and that you are making the best out of every day, because otherwise you're wasting your time. And like, I think the most common thing that a lot of high school students say is like, oh, I don't have time to like do this XYZ cool project. And it's because you're not making time for it. And you're wasting your time on things that maybe don't matter to you. And so make sure that you, again, like internships are big time commitments. Make sure that you are putting time and effort into them. And yeah, so that was my presentation. Thank you guys so much for coming to my workshop. Here are a few relevant links. If you want to schedule a personal call with me for me to like look over your resume to help you get an internship, or just like talk about nonprofits or STEM, you can do it at my Calendly. You can also email me. I am in my email all the time. And if you liked this workshop, be sure to follow Girl Genius on Instagram. We have a lot more planned. And thank you so much again to Synhacks for allowing me to do this workshop. And now I'll just be having the next like 11 minutes open for questions.
Alrighty, Emma, would you like to take it away with the questions?
Yeah, sure. So I guess one question could be, what was your inspiration in starting like Girl Genius and like starting these workshops?
I'm sorry, Zoom is being weird. Well, for me, starting like a virtual workshop series and like doing conferences, we'd always wanted to do like virtual events because, I think it's great that there's so many hackathons in the Bay Area and like virtually, but there's not a lot of things for people who are interested in science or math or art that are online. Like something I just noticed was that there were like so many tech workshops, like intro to Python, intro to blockchain. Although those skills are very valuable, no matter what field you end up going into. For my friends interested in like science or art or math, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for them, even when COVID wasn't happening. And so that's really why we wanted to do these virtual workshops. I think that, with coronavirus happening, like everyone just kind of does have like an extra hour of their day to spare, and using that time to, hear from a cool speaker that, you probably couldn't have ever interacted with because they lived 3,000 miles away from you is an opportunity that I think everyone should take advantage of during this time.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for that. Another question is, could you explain what is a MPA and IDA?
Like an MVP, is that what
Yeah.
an MVP is like a minimal viable product. So like that is what you would generally make at a hackathon, like it's basically kind of like a prototype of like what you want to do. And so like when you go to a hackathon, you only have like a limited amount of time to like actually make a project. And like the goal is to kind of like, convey what you ultimately want your project to be because you don't have as much time to like make your project be exactly what you envision it to be. And so, yeah, I really liked working, building those MVPs, coming up with those ideas. Like another MVP like example would be like making a lot of app frames before like actually like, coding your app or making your app like using like drag and drop software and being like, this is a prototype of what we're doing. If you like this, we're going to be actually coding it and making it, cross-platform accessible.
Yeah, thank you. What about another question is what is your advice to someone who is like discouraged from rejections from internships or opportunities? Like what would you say to them?
I mean, I was originally too. Like like I remember I applied to this like Stanford internship and like they didn't like look at your grades. They only looked at your ECs. And I thought like, oh, like, my ECs really reveal a lot about my skills. And then I got rejected and I was like so sad. I was like, oh my God, I really thought I was gonna get it. But I did. And like honestly, it's okay. Like I've been living. It's fine. Um, and I think that it's important to realize that like your imposter syndrome is very valid and that everyone in the room has felt it. Um, but I think that, with rejection, it's not necessarily about like whether or not like, you know, like, oh, you're not qualified enough. I think that does take into account like sometimes like really look at the skill set. Did you actually like have the skills they wanted or did you not? And if you didn't, like maybe it's time to work on those skills, right? Like especially with everything being online right now, this is the perfect time again to like build your skill set. But again, realizing that like rejection is just redirection. Like, like with my internship getting postponed, I acted quickly. I used my network and I loved my ASU internship. Like, it was only 2 hours every day, but like I loved having discussions with the CEO on like, coming up with strategies and like seeing that like, wow, like I really liked business. Whereas like my research internship, my other one would have just like kind of steered me more into the tech area. And so like, it's okay that I feel rejected. Honestly, I think that a lot of us are rejected more than we're accepted for like a lot of things. Even when it comes down to like leadership positions, just know like everything literally happens for a reason, and that you really do have time. Like this is just high school. Your internship experience is only beginning.
Yeah, so you mentioned a little bit about imposter syndrome. So what do you think is like the best mechanism to guard against that?
So at Verizon, like on our third day, we actually got to hear from like the CTO, and she said something that really resonated with me as someone who like, when you're scrolling on LinkedIn, you're seeing like, oh, did research at Stanford, and I'm like, okay, we're closing this app now. Um, is that confidence is a skill that everyone is learning. I think that this is so important to recognize, and also that someone else's like victories or like achievements don't undermine yours. Like it shouldn't necessarily be a competitive thing. Like, oh my God, my friend got an internship. Like, why didn't I? Like, it's okay. Um, that is something that I'm definitely growing to like learn how to tackle. But also like I think I remember reading this somewhere. It's about like recognizing like why you're feeling the imposter syndrome rather than just like pushing it away. Because maybe like you're comparing yourself to someone and it's recognizing like why is what they're doing mattering you do so much, like if you've never met them before. So like taking account into that, I also like have a 20-minute time limit on my phone on LinkedIn. That has honestly been pretty nice. Just knowing that like I can go on there for like 20 minutes every day and I don't have to worry about any of that. Um, and I think that ultimately, like, I know this is going to be hard because of COVID, but just surrounding yourself with people who like believe in you. Like for me, that was like my engineering academy family. Like living in such a hyper competitive environment where people are like, no, I'm not going to share what internship or summer program I'm doing over the summer with you. So like I could stand out. Like I think that's so dumb. Like I literally helped one of my friends get an internship this summer because like it has got postponed because of COVID. And like that's the way that you should be treating your friends, rather than like feeling this sense of imposter syndrome and competition in your circle.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely get that. I guess another question would be like, what obstacles have you like personally faced besides like rejections and rejections from like companies and other opportunities?
Um, I wouldn't say I faced this directly in an internship, but I remember when I had to code my first website for like a big event, like a hackathon. Like I came in with like a decent amount of web dev experience. Like I had been interning at Safe Squad then, so I like was pretty familiar with like the web development languages. But I noticed that like every single day that I would code the website, the lead director would like change a lot of what I did behind my back. And to me, that was a form of micromanaging and not communicating. And like that made me feel again so much imposter syndrome, but also like, oh my God, I don't deserve this position. I can't code, I can't design. Like I just felt so bad about myself, like I had been pouring my heart and soul into this project. Like I spent my SSRs like literally asking random people who had never been to a hackathon before. I'm like, hey, look at this website. What do you think about it? Okay. And so like to me that was really, really hard to deal with because it was kind of like questioning the worth of my work and also understanding that like, you know, that like I was good at what I did. And I think that when that is happening, it's first and foremost like really important to like I wish I had like actually like confronted this a lot earlier on to avoid it. Like if you feel like you're being micromanaged or that, your ideas aren't being heard, like that is something you have to communicate with someone. It's just like I think especially with a virtual environment, again, like a lot of people are not going to recognize like body language. Like a lot of people don't necessarily talk on Zoom calls, so it could just be like, oh, like they're having a Zoom hangover, rather than like, oh, they're not happy with what you said. Like it's very hard to like interpret how someone's feeling online. And so like that is something that I'm dealing with like still. And I think that it's really important, like even when you're in a group setting, regardless of whether you're doing an internship or not, it's very important to create an inclusive atmosphere where like you are not doing the work for other people. Like you are there for a reason. Someone picked you for a reason. Um, and I think that like it's really important to like celebrate the small victories when it comes to that. Like even if it's like making a line how to code to work, like that is a skill in itself. Like we all know being at these hackathons, okay, like you'll be staring at a code of line for so long and like you'll figure out like, oh my God, I forgot a semicolon, and it'll start working and it'll feel so great. So like really make sure that like, you are celebrating those things and recognizing that like, you can accomplish great things. Like it's going to take time, but like you are capable of it is very, very important.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess the last one would be, you mentioned about like building your skill set. How would you like find the opportunities to do that or like the resources to do that?
I think that if you're interested in tech, definitely like taking advantage of the amount of virtual hackathons like this is so important. Like I would always, when I like competed a lot rather than organizing, I would always push my projects to GitHub. And I remember like when I applied to like Safe Squad, she was like, oh, can you send me like some websites you've made? And I literally just said, I was like, hey, I made this website in like 12 hours. Here you go. Or like I would send her like some app wireframes I made on like Canva or Figma or like Photoshop. And so like even though those aren't necessarily completed projects, or like maybe you could take a project you made at a hackathon and actually build upon it, like I think that's a skill that like a lot of people don't do, and it's a pretty underused opportunity. um, I think that also, like shameless plug, but there's so many virtual events that are happening like this and like workshops that like teach you how to code. Like we are going to be having one in August. um, if you're interested in that, no pressure, no shade, it's okay. But definitely taking advantage of that during this time, I think will really, really help you. Um, And force your friends to come along and just like hack with you. Like that's something that I always do whenever I like want to go to a hackathon. It's like, hey guys, like let's do this. Let's have fun with it. And I think that like that's a really great way to like learn how your skill set, because I think that forcing yourself to work with new people, especially like at hackathons, like I never came in with a team like to an in-person hackathon. And that allowed me to like work on projects that I never thought I would like, never in a million years I thought like I would come up with like at a hackathon. And so like I think that surrounding yourself with a diversity of people will allow you to like really build your skill set depending on like what you're interested in.
Yeah, for sure. That was super insightful. Thank you so much for coming and dedicating like your time to present. It was really interesting to hear, and I think our attendees will learn a lot from it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for the opportunity. I had fun.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing everything. And for those joining us on the live stream, and for our hackathon attendees, tonight we have our last event of this hackathon, last game night of this hackathon, which will be a movie night. So join us at 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and we'll be watching Hamilton. Alrighty, thank you and goodbye.
All right, bye guys.